This lecture is on the business loop. It's part of the Technology Strategy course given at the Department of Engineering Science at the University of Oxford. This mini lecture will start by looking at what is a business. Secondly, it will describe what we mean by a loop or a learning loop. And thirdly, it will use these two ideas to say how do we create a successful business. We'll see as part of that we need to make strategic investments, and we'll just look a little bit more in detail on how to do that. Let's start by asking the key question, what do we mean by a business? Have a little think by thinking, what do you think what a business is? Well, a business is something that creates societal or customer value. Value comes in many different forms. Some of them may include the particular cost that you provide the service at, or some of the key features that you offer, which may be things such as the style, the look, or even the service that you provide with that particular product. Let's consider what societal value is created by the following companies. Let's consider firstly the ice company. The ice company is depicted on the front page of this mini-series. A group of people used to chop up ice from the Great Lakes within the Americas and ship it around the world. It was one of the main techniques of keeping food and water cold. Clearly, there's a direct benefit for being able to store food for longer, and that is the societal value they're creating. What about companies like Apple? Well, on the first instance, they look like they're creating the ability to do computing, but also they have a sense of style and appeal, which is used to create iconic products which people find desirable because it gives the owners a sense of status. Places like BT and Boeing, again, in the first instance, look relatively straightforward, but just have a clear think about exactly what they're doing. Coke is a little bit more tricky. They're actually creating a lifestyle image which people are buying into. It's definitely not the product per se, as it only costs a tiny amount of what the true value of Coke really is all about. The clear thing about these companies is that they have a competitive advantage. That is, they can outcompete others in the marketplace. They do this by delivering what's called distinctive competencies. Those are the aspects of their company that provide societal value which is difficult to be able to replicate by others. Now that we know what a business is, let's consider what a loop is. Let's consider a simpler form where we consider linear causality. In other words, we have an action which leads to a direct effect. So for instance, if we throw the ball in the air, we see the behavior and respond to it. So we experience something, and that leads to an observation. Linear causality does not readily change behavior because it's just simply a cause and effect. There's no way to actually reinforce certain behaviors. For that we need a loop. A loop is where we have a number of interacting actions which feed back on themselves, thus reinforcing the system. So let's consider our ball again. We have an experience which leads to an observation. In our mind, we can then see that observation and create a mental model of how that ball is going to move through the air. We then test that model by seeing whether we can actually catch the ball. The experience of catching the ball means that our model is correct, or if we don't catch the ball, we need to update our model so as to better fit reality. This loop of experience, observation, modeling, testing, and then improving experience provides a way that we have lock-in. That is, we continually improve the model by going around this loop more and more times so that we improve in catching that ball. So how do we apply this to the business? Let's consider the business loop. This was first put forward by Kees van den Heijden, and I would strongly suggest you go and read his book, Scenarios, The Art of Strategic Conversation. It's an excellent book which provides a good overview of how to apply strategy to the businesses. So, the business loop, what do we mean by that? Well, let's start off having a distinctive competency. Remember, it is that aspect which eventually leads to customer value. With that distinctive competency, we need to put together a unique activity set. This is all the boilerplate stuff which every business needs to do, and includes such things as invoicing, human relations, and being able to have a distribution channel. Unique activity set, together with a distinctive competency, we then create a competitive advantage within the marketplace. And if we succeed, we'll then start to accrue value. This linear loop is where most companies will stop. They see a distinctive competency, have a unique activity set, have a competitive advantage, and then accrue value. However, the really successful ones go through to the next step to complete, and that is they start to make strategic investments. These strategic investments allow you to create more distinctive competencies, therefore improving the livelihood of the company and being able to go around this loop to accrue more and more value as they have greater and greater distinctive competencies. A classic example of somebody who does this extremely well is Google. But how do we start this loop? Well, we start by having a unique insight. A unique insight is recognition that there is particular value to be had in the marketplace which can be derived from a particular product. Having this unique insight, however, is not enough. We need to have entrepreneurial invention. This is the addition of the capability to take that unique idea and actually execute it within the marketplace. Often this requires a cash injection, the establishment of market chains, and proving yourself within the market. Once you have those, you can then start to create a unique activity set which then brings you into this loop. And effectively, your unique insight becomes your distinctive competency within the marketplace, driving you more and more value as you go around this loop. Let's consider a case. In our particular case, consider a Yasamoto, which is a machine that was developed right here in Oxford within our particular department. This particular unique insight was a machine which was extremely lightweight and had very high torque for its particular size. The entrepreneurial activity required a cash injection, meeting up with particular suppliers, and finding customers. This led to a design, supply chain, marketing and assembly, and sales to the market. A high-performance motor to actually be established. Over time, this led to increasing sales into various niche applications. However, it was realized that one needed to have a further drive towards lowering the costs, and that was our strategic insight that was required. This led to an investment in further injection tools and forging components so as to dramatically reduce the cost. Together with our existing supply chain, that now created a higher value to the company and to society. So when do we do strategic investment? Well, the first scenario is when the company is flourishing. And what we want to do is to increase resources and increase competitiveness. As I said earlier, Google is great at doing it, and so is Apple. So if you consider Google, they started off as a simple search engine. However, with time they added an ads capability. Then they moved into mobile phones, and now they're moving into a wide variety of aspects, including things like YouTube. The second case is when the company is in survival mode. It has increasing competitors, increasing substitutions, that is, the alternative technologies providing the same service, or there's a change in societal constraints, which may be that the society is getting older or younger, or, for instance, that people no longer want to smoke. An example of this two companies that are struggling are places like HMV and BT. HMV is struggling because of the substitutions of the digital download, and it hasn't been able to provide strategic investments to move into that space. BT has been struggling because of increasing competitors, and so is looking at unusual ways of taking things forward. Let's consider BT in a little bit more detail. BT was originally in the business of connecting wires between telephones found in homes and offices. However, there have been two major disruptions. First, in technology. Mobile phones and the internet have offered a substitution to conventional land-based telephones. Secondly, there's been a regulatory change where the very distinctive competency of those wires have had to be unbundled, allowing competitors to use that competitive space that BT once had. So, the wires connecting between the different people is no longer distinctive competency, and therefore no longer yields a competitive advantage. So it needs to rethink what it can do. So when faced to reconsider one's strategy, one can ask the following strategic questions. The first and the most important one is to identify what one is doing, and particularly, what are the existing strengths of the company. The second question is to ask, what can I do? Consider all the various things that are possible that the company can do based on the existing strengths. The third and most important question, though, to answer is, what creates the most value for the company? And that gives us the answer to what one should be doing. So let's consider BT and answering some of those strategic questions. Firstly, what is BT doing? Well, not only does it have a substantial network of wires, it also has a large customer base. And in order to meet the needs of those large customers, it has a very efficient billing mechanisms. Given that it's got an opportunity to meet the mass market, what can it do? Well, the first one is it can continue as before, but that does not seem like a likely outcome. The second one is to say, how can it add new services to add value to retain customers and to get new customers coming in? So what should BT do? So let's review this mini lecture. We start off by identifying that a business is something that creates distinctive value to the end customer. A loop reinforced behavior. A business loop allowed a company to increase its amount of distinctive competencies and thus create more value. And we decided that strategic investments are required either when a company was flourishing, so it can gain more distinctive competencies, or when it was struggling, when it had to reinvent itself. Thank you for listening to this lecture.